This is a 2015 F-350 with the 6.2 V8. I've owned this for a couple years and about 15,000 miles. I've had zero issues with it so far and got zero service history with it. It clearly has been taken care of. I bought it from a state government auction. It was a wildlife truck for the state of Ohio. I've got no misfires or running issues, but just in the name of preventative maintenance, it's time to do plugs and wires. Now the consensus on the Ford 6.2 is to go with factory Motorcraft everything. I could not find the Motorcraft wires, and the coils were kind of expensive. I've decided to give MSD a try. I've never heard anything bad about MSD, but most people will say aftermarket coils are either fine or they last 3,000 miles. So I will report back as to whether these are going to be a reliable choice. I've also chosen to go with Iridium NGK plugs. I've had good luck with them. I read that NGK makes the Motorcraft plugs. I don't know for sure. And when doing plugs and wires, you don't have to change out the coils. Coils either work or they don't. The problem why people have misfires and replace coils is the boot. You can replace the boots with a kit like this. They come with the rubber boot, the spring, and this little pill. The pill goes up against the coil that connects the top of the spring to the plug. Now, I did a video on why you shouldn't replace these. You should replace the whole coil, and this is why right here. These coils have about 160,000 miles on them, factory coils, and I tried replacing the boots. It's very difficult to get the boot off without breaking the plastic housing on the coil because it gets old and brittle with age. The second problem is if you can get it out without damaging it, you have to remove the little pill. You can see how corroded that gets. It gets stuck in there. You can see those splines. Those can get damaged easily. It's very difficult to get it out without damaging it on an old coil. You can see this whole mess here. That's the junk that comes out. If you have lower mileage coils, you could probably get away with doing the boot, but I would suggest going with a complete kit. This truck has about 170,000 miles. There's 16 plugs in this. There's a set down below and a set up top. You can see it looks like these wires have been changed. I'm assuming the plugs have been changed as well. So I'm going to pull these out. If you have not had your plugs changed in a while, it would be a good idea to run your motor first. That way the motor gets up to operating temperature. It's easier to pull the plugs out when they're hot. In order to reach the lower ones here, you need to remove your wheel well liner. It's held in with three of these 8mm bolts with thick washers on. They go in here. And then you have two 8mm right up here at the top. And a series of 5.5mm. They go here in the fender. So that should be hot enough to loosen up the plugs a bit. 2011 and 12 Super Duties had a bolt that goes right here, but later models just have these grommets and pegs. One thing I'm going to do is remove this throttle body and clean it. It gets pretty dirty on the backside. It's 4 bolts and a clip. And one thing you want to do when you get these coils out, before you pull the plug, is spray some compressed air in there. Dirt and junk gets in there, and the spark plug goes straight down into the cylinder. You don't want anything falling in. A wobble extension is a good tool to have for this job. These are Autolite plugs, so they have been changed. The gap on these, this is supposed to be a 0.41 gap in using this cheap little tool. It's closer to 0.44. Now these iridium plugs you're not really supposed to gap, but from the factory they're about spot on, so I'm just going to pop them in. Now the controversial part is putting anti-seize on the threads. They say that, some people swear by it, some people say you shouldn't do it because it messes with the torque settings on these, which I'm not going to torque. They also say it's unnecessary since most of these nicer plugs have a plating, you can kind of tell, which is supposed to prevent that from seizing. I'm going to go ahead and put a dab on it, just a small amount. If you do that, be sure you do not get it on the electrode. It must be threads only, and don't get it on the tip either. I've had this for probably 7 years. It's kind of thick on there. I might swap it out for a fresh bottle. And be careful, this stuff gets everywhere. You can see I barely touched it. It's already all over my fingers. You can see that's not nearly as dry. You don't need a lot of this stuff. Always do the plug by hand first before you start cranking on it. And you only need 3/8 for this. Good and tight to the torque spec. See, that's what happens. The core gets pulled out of there, stuck on the plug. They're used, but I'd like to keep these as spares in the truck just in case, so I try and avoid that. As expected, that front plug was a little more difficult, but still not too bad. The wobble extension is pretty handy, but I couldn't get the leverage that I needed on that front one, so a standard 3-inch extension with this small Pittsburgh from Harbor Freight, that's only, was that 1.5 inches? 1 3/4? That seemed to help, and coming from the top was really the only way I could get leverage on it. As you can see, that wasn't too bad of a job. You can see how rusty that lower one gets. I don't know if that's going to show up right where the socket goes. So putting some anti-seize is probably not a bad idea. They were in there pretty tight. Ford uses these red lock tabs for some reason. They're not required. They break all the time when you try and pull them out, and they don't keep the plug in place. The normal tab keeps in place. This just prevents you from pressing on the normal tab. Then you can press the normal tab once that comes out. There's some rust in that. This is a plastic intake, and these 8mm bolts thread into a brass threaded insert in the intake. So be careful pulling these out for the first time. Otherwise that brass insert is just going to spin. So use hand tools. You can see right there where it gets a little crusty. It's a good practice to put anti-seize on that as well. That's what I'll be putting on. You see how corroded that is in there? And in there? I didn't have any misfires on this truck, but that's why you change these out. And driver's side and passenger side are different. It's pretty obvious when you put them in. You can probably see all that stuff flying with the compressed air. That's why it's important to do that. Now you can see the state of this upper plug, how corroded it is. Water will make its way in the engine bay, and it just gets sunk right down in there. So putting, you can even see, putting some anti-seize on the threads isn't a bad idea, and probably using some dielectric grease would be a good idea as well. This truck had 0 misfires and was running well, but you can see it was just a matter of time. Looks like water got into that one. These are still pliable, so these might be replacements. Otherwise, they have a tendency to get brittle and completely break. These look like they're stainless steel, but you can see where it corrodes a little bit. I'm going to put anti-seize on those as well. Now when you're doing your coils, driver's side and passenger side are different. On the MSD they have a D for driver's side and a P for passenger side. You can see the difference. It's where the screw hole goes and how it's mounted. Let's get some anti-seize on these plugs and put everything together, back together. You're pushing this back in, don't press on the electrode, just get the threads. What's going on in there? In the number 7 plug well, there's a small, looks like a piece of gravel stuck in between the plug and the wall, and it's not allowing me to get a socket on it. Got a different air compressor here. You see why it's important to do that? This long reach is much better than that little tiny one that I had. I couldn't angle it in there. All right, it's on, it's clear. Let's see how rusty that is. This spark plug socket gets stuck on the spark plug pretty easy. So the best thing to do is kind of rock it back and forth and twist a bit as you're pulling up. And it comes right out. One thing you got to be sure, this is a rookie mistake, I don't have this coil lined up. I kept trying to line it up like this. Where the coil plugs in needs to go directly out. So I've got this angled, and I was only able to do that because of the fuel rail. And now I can get that in there angled perfectly. So that's why that was so tight. Never force anything. Stop, take a break, and reevaluate what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to start breaking parts. Now, that is the correct way. So this is a Belden Edge. I've never heard of them. And it's 8 millimeters. This MSD is 8.5. I didn't even realize it was larger. You can see that back one, how corroded that is. That was on this plug. Number 8. Never had a misfire. The kit comes with these special zip ties. They plug right there into the valve cover. It also comes with these little labels, plastic clips, you can put on the wire so you know which is which. That side done. Probably not going to film the other side. Same thing. Just wanted to show these back 3 plugs how corroded they were. This truck was still running well with no misfire, but it was probably a matter of time before something was going to pop up. That's why preventative maintenance is so important, especially if you take your truck long distance in tow, like I do. You don't want to be stuck on the side of the road with a load or a non-running truck on a trailer somewhere far away from your shop or home. So preventative maintenance, it's good to go by the schedule. Definitely worth doing. Got everything back together, started it up, and there's no misfires or anything. It's running well. So now the next step is to put the wheel well liners in, but put a little fluid film on this rust so it hopefully doesn't get much worse.